Hi everyone, I'm sorry I haven't put out any videos recently, but I've been in the process of moving house. And with a new house comes this building, which hopefully will become a new workshop. The problem is that to get to the workshop, first we have to clear this muddy hill. And we've got a little excavator that we've been using to scrape away all the dirt and the little dumper truck to just take it away. We cleared about 25 to, probably about 25 cubic meters, or roughly 25 cubic yards of sludge, to be honest, sludge and soil, to just get it scraped back to a reasonably decent surface. But even then, it was still too wet for the van, and it needed a little help getting up the hill, towed it up with the mini digger. So here's a view of the barn from the other side. It's 3 bays deep, and each bay is about 20 feet long, so about 6 meters. And the plan is to use one of the 3 bays as the workshop. Now, before we put anything in, we need to fix this big hole in the roof. Hello. So the idea is that Kate's on the inside pushing up the old roofing panel, and I'm on the outside pushing the new one up underneath it, so any water running down will fall onto the new sheet and carry on down the roof. To make sure that I didn't fall through the roof, we put up a few old wooden doors that were long enough to span the gaps between the purlins. Conveniently, they had some nice slats on the back, so they acted like a nice big wide roof ladder. They're a bit difficult to get up there. I'm actually tied onto the bucket at the top of the digger to make sure I don't fall off the ladder. And then we threw a rope over the top of the building and tied it onto this little tractor to make sure that the doors didn't slide down the roof. You can see the door there, I'm lying on it, and you can just about make out the rope going over the top. With everything set up there, I could get in and drill through the new panel and put some Tek screws in and hold the new panel down in place. And that makes the roof nice and waterproof again. With that done, I could untie the safety rope from the digger and the tractor, and let gravity do its work. Quick tug and down it all came. Right, on to the next job. So we've got a couple of problems here. The gutters, where the gutters join, they have a little coupling piece, and you can see the big black line on the wall over there. There's one leaking just there, and there's one leaking just here by the downpipe. So it's off up the ladder to try and find out what's going on. I started out by just clearing out all of the dirt and moss that had grown in the joint, and it looks like it's pushed it all apart and it's all got a bit sludged up. So now I've got all the bits down, I can see what's happened. When gutters go together, the gutter is meant to go in the connector, and it's only meant to go in part of the way like that, so there's a bit of a gap. But what's happened is, over time I presume, all the gutters have concertinaed up and they've pushed up against this stop. So they've all closed up, and there's 3 or 4 of these, which means at the other end we've ended up with a gap, and of course all the water's just falling out. So what I need to do is put it all back together and reset it so the gutter is in the right position and it's got this little gap. Now this gap here is for thermal expansion. If you think about it, we've got a big long piece of plastic here. When plastic gets hot in the sun, it expands, and when it gets cold, it contracts. So when it's warming up, it's got a little bit of space to grow into, and then when it cools, it's got a little bit of room to go back. If they're all buttered up like this, as the gutter gets hot, you end up with a big wibbly wobbly gutter because it's got no room to grow into. Now the only other thing is, this particular connector is a bit damaged, the seal's gone, so we'll get this scraped out and dried up, and then on this one probably have to put a little bit of sealant in to replace the seal. Hopefully I'll get in with a little scraper. So here's a slightly smaller one, and you can see here that it's got this line, it says gutter end, and there's a bit of a gap between there and the stop. and that's just to tell you when you're assembling them where to end your gutter, and just to give it that little bit of room for expansion and contraction. That just goes in there, hooks under there like that, and then push it down, and just leave that to set for a bit. Normally, because the seal here is quite thick, the gutter sort of snaps in under these hooks, and that keeps the whole joint nice and tight. Now, my sealant isn't as thick as this, so this has all got a little bit of movement in it, and over time that will invariably come loose and this will start to leak. So I've got some little bits of plastic here that I'm going to wedge up under here, and the same on the other side. I'll put a little bit of glue in there as well so they don't fall out, and that should help to squash the gutter down onto the sealant and keep the joint nice and tight so it doesn't leak in 6 months' time. Now, you might be wondering why I don't just go out and buy a new one of these, and it's purely and simply because we're in the middle of lockdown at the moment, so going out to get things is against the rules. So it's very much a case of just make do and mend, and to be honest, it's the middle of February and not having a leaking gutter is quite important because it's damaging the building and we don't want that. There we go, that just fits in there nicely. That's now got a bit of preload on it. Brill. Leave that to dry and then we'll put it back up. While I'm out here doing this, I've just noticed this downpipe isn't connected at the top. So what I'll do is just hutch it up and then pop something under the bottom to hold it in place. Make sure this end's a bit lower than that end, and then the water will run away from the building. I'll have to get some proper drains put in here at some point. With that little job done, we got the van unloaded into that big pile you can see over there, and the plan is to put a mezzanine all the way across the back of the workshop here, roughly just higher than where the wall meets the wooden cladding. Now, there are a few other problems with this shed. This is the back left corner, and you can see that it is very wet in here. And this is actually all water that's coming in through the foundations and under the wall. And if you look down the left-hand side of the building here, you can see that the bank has all slid down and the ground level outside is actually higher than it is inside, so all the water's just pouring in. But that's a problem for another day. On the subject of another day, it was time to go back over to the old workshop to pick up the machines. I used the pallet truck that I'd restored in a previous video to move the machines out. I've got them set up on some pallets. The Bridgeport milling machine's just coming out at the moment, and I've got all of the valuable bits covered up with some black pallet wrap and tape. As much as I hate this stuff because it's incredibly bad for the environment, given the weather in this country, it's not worth the risk of leaving things uncovered. And then the Jones & Shipman surface grinders coming out next. I've got a little bit of aluminium checker plate on the floor just turned upside down to help ease them out of the workshop because there's a bit of a step down from the floor onto the drive. So the lathe was the first one to go on, and we just used some bits of steel tube to roll it up onto the trailer and the winch on the front of the trailer to pull it up. And again, the bits of aluminium checker plate are just there to help spread the load out and make sure we don't damage the bottom of the trailer. This trailer's also getting a horse box on the back of it for another customer of the transport companies. So we're just spinning the lathe round through 90 degrees so that there's enough space on the back of the trailer for the horse box, because that's getting dropped off at someone else's house that's en route. So we just use the pallet truck to go underneath it and lift it up, turn it around and drop it down. And then we could get the next trailer in for the other machines. So on the second trailer, the Bridgeport went on first. So we've got the winch at the bottom that's actually pulling it on. And then you can see Kate with the high visibility hood on. She's just got a rope onto the top of the machine through a belay plate, which is just acting as a safety rope because the Bridgeport's quite top heavy. so we don't want it to topple over backwards. So the pallet truck's just being used as the wheels, and then the winch is pulling it up, and then we're just moving the bit of aluminium plate around just to help protect the trailer. I'm just debating where to put it at the moment to try and make sure that it's got its load over a couple of the cross members under the trailer, and it's not going to be too far forward or too far back for the towing weight. I'm just having a little shuffle round, make sure everything's where we want it. Before we strapped it down, we actually put some scaffold boards underneath it. As this is a car trailer, most of the strength is actually out on the sides, and there's not a huge amount of structure in the middle. So the scaffold boards just help to spread the load out a little bit. So the Jones and Shipman went on next. We used exactly the same technique, just winched it up using the winch on the trailer and then a safety line on the top, and then that got strapped on behind the Bridgeport. And then behind that we could just put on a couple of cabinets, you know, racking and a filing cabinet. And of course, by the time we got to the other end, it was dark. It was about a 5-hour drive. So the lathe came off the other trailer first, and then the Jones and Shipman came off exactly the opposite of putting it on. So we're just lowering it with the winch and then the safety line on the top, and then the Bridgeport, the scaffold boards out, and then just adjust the pallet truck and again lower it on the winch nice and carefully. We'll put the bits of checker plate down to help spread the load out so we don't damage the trailer with the pallet truck, and then very carefully get another piece of checker plate and just get it lined up with the ramp. Last thing we want to do is drop it off the ramp. That would be very unfortunate. And then in it goes. The plan is to get this area enclosed and have a nice clean, dry, maybe, well, hopefully insulated and heated workshop. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.